Few people know that a jester can be a member of a royal court. They can sit in every council meeting, and they can give advice just as much as they can dance and make people laugh. Now, the jester in question, the jester of this story, has not been able to do any of those things. For the young prince went missing but a few months ago, and everyone has done nothing but argue about what must happen next since. See, the royal family has been long gone, and the young prince was the last remaining member of that their family and that their throne. And so everyone has been discussing eagerly and angrily as to what to do next. Unfortunately for our jester, they could not care less. For our jester only wanted to be a jester. They only wanted to make a monarch laugh, as was their duty as the royal jester, I suppose. So after goodness knows how many meetings, they are sat in yet another, where pompous, disgruntled individuals argue incessantly as to what should happen next. Who should be crowned king? Whether this person should be queen? Whether a monarch is needing it all? The jester simply didn't care. So it was that the jester left. They took their jingle stick, their happy hat, and their curly boots, and they wandered into the forest. There they sat and grumbled to themselves in a clearing, sat on a large rock, on their own. Oh, so they thought. After a while of grumbling and pacing, they stopped, took a step back, and realized stood beside them, in the middle of the forest, attached to no hinges or doorway, was indeed a door. It had no handle in this end, of course, but it was most obviously a door, decorated in the most beautiful fashion. A tall, maybe birch, wooden thing. A giant eye was carved into the top, and falling from it like tears were autumn leaves. The door glistened, like faint gold lined within it. The jester was most confused, of course. There was no hinges to this door, no handle to this door, and yet it seemed to be standing there, upright and firm. They tried to see what was behind the door, and so going round one side, peering round, they realized their head came about the other side. No matter how much they tried to get behind the door, they kept simply appearing on the other side of it. At one point, they were even able to see their own buttocks. They thought it was quite a nifty trick and spent a small amount of time trying to figure it out, hoping one day maybe they could use it themselves to make a young noble laugh. But while they were playing with the strange, meager magic of the door, there was a knock upon it. They stopped their gesturing and stood and waited. They briefly looked for a handle, but they remembered there was none, and then the knock got louder. They took a step back, concerned of what would happen next, and then the knock was as loud as it had ever been, and the door burst open ever so briefly. A flurry of blue and floof came flying at them, knocking them on their back. The door seemed to slam shut, a burst of light being the only thing that could be seen other than this very fast-moving, strange-looking creature. The jester panicked, scrambled to their feet, and sat on the floor of what had previously been sat on their chest. It was a small blue creature with large black eyes that seemed to have a galaxy within them. Tall, pointy ears with fluffy nubbins, and a big floofy tail. Like a very fat house cat had been dyed blue, their ears stretched very pointy, and their ears turned into galactic marbles. Big fangs just out from their mouth, and they seemed to vibrate on the floor as if they were, a small child being very, very grumpy. And they spoke in the most peculiar manner. The jester tried to calm them down with everything they could, and it wasn't until they did a little slapstick joke that they finally got the thing to look at them for a second and calm down. The jester started asking questions, but the small creature replied in the strangest of manners. It was after a while of this pointless questioning that Jester realized they actually recognized the way the small creature spoke. And so it was the Jester began to speak backwards. At first, the small creature, while understanding, seemed to stay very, very grumpy. In fact, the creature was speaking perfectly backwards, and the Jester knew this trick from a joke they did a very, very long time ago. And so, seeing no real success in diplomacy, the Jester took to their old tricks and told a joke. The little blue creature giggled. It was such a lovely sound. But the Jester continued to make more jokes, do more silly routines, throwing their jingle stick into the air and catching it within their jingly hat, falling over their own curly boots. And what the Jester didn't realize at first, but did notice after a small while, is that with every time the little creature laughed, that strange appearance of theirs seemed to get less strange. Their tall, pointy ears grew short. Their blue fur seemed to recede. And their little jutting, snarly teeth went back inside their mouth. Little white molars were in their place. Their big black eyes turned small again and shone lovely hazel in the evening light. By the time the Jester was done with their routine, quite carried away indeed they were, they recognized the small little boy sat absolutely raucous with laughter in front of them. You see, for all the Jester's jesting, they had quite frankly cured a most strange curse indeed. No one quite saw the young prince go through that strange door all those months ago. And no one but the Jester would have been able to fix the strange curse at all. In fact, the prince could have spent the rest of their lives as a blue furry creature speaking entirely backwards, or worse yet, something could have happened to them. But luckily for the young prince, who was ever so lost, a Jester was a member of our royal court, and a Jester was so irritated by their arguing that they wandered into the woods. And the Jester found that wondrous door that seemed so eager to give back what it once stole. So it was that the Jester, jingling with every step, bells on the end of every item of their clothing, walked the young prince all the way back to the castle and placed him back on his throne. The Jester would make that prince laugh his entire life, but he would never repeat what he saw behind that door as it slowly closed ajar, as he looked behind himself, walking that young boy back to the castle. The fascinating lights and the whispers and the wonders of that world behind it. The Jester would never forget a single thing, nor would they repeat it.